Hey, welcome back or welcome to a new episode of Entrepreneurial Thinkers. I'm Rob Ryan, and I got to tell you, this conversation with my friend here in Los Angeles, Qiana Patterson, was deep, it's rich, it's full of positive energy and wise perspective on the world of tech, venture investment, the entrepreneurial life, and just kind of societal macroeconomics as a whole. If you are an entrepreneur interested in trying to understand what makes the modern day forward looking investor of today tick and what motivates them, this is an episode you want to listen to. If you're a fellow investor who wants to think differently about how you invest and about how you raise your capital from your investors and how you position yourself in today's market, this is an episode you don't want to miss. If you're from here in Los Angeles, or you're not from Los Angeles, but you wonder about what makes us who we are here, and you want to learn about the uniqueness of Los Angeles and our potential built upon that, you want to listen to this episode. I'm just incredibly grateful for this conversation with my good friend, Qiana Patterson, who arguably is one of the most active and forward-looking investors in our entrepreneurial economy today at a global level. She's particularly influential here in Los Angeles and across the United States, but she's playing the macro game. And it was just an incredible joy to dive deep into this conversation with her. And so I hope you enjoy listening to it and watching it as much as we did making it for you. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, welcome back or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you know, if you're a regular listener, this is the show where I get to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry. As we come together in our common goal to try and leave this world a little bit better than we found it today. So I'm super grateful to be joined by my friend, Qiana Patterson. Qiana, amongst many things that she does, has been the managing partner at Naya, a venture studio, for a number of years now. Qiana Patterson is one of the most dynamic women I know. The depth of her talents, the range of her curiosity, and the breadth of experience that she brings to life is amongst the most uniquely deep, rich, smart, and empathetic people that I've ever had the good pleasure to meet. She brings every bit of this and what makes her her to her work, as we've referred to in the venture studio world at Naya, but also by empowering entrepreneurs through a variety of different technology companies across a variety of different industries who are trying to tackle the world's biggest challenges. She is a leader, also an advisor and investor at the Cap Table Coalition. She's an investor at residence at Realist Labs, and she's an investor in far too many innovative companies for me to list here in her bio. So beyond that, though, beyond these tech industry titles and roles, the thing that is most fascinating about her to me is that she spent her early career in education and frankly was an English teacher to middle school students, which is not the career path that most of us are used to when we're talking to tech titans and tech industry investors. Eventually that led her to grow her career to become a dean of students inside of this Los Angeles Unified School District, which for those that don't know is the second largest public school district in the United States. She's worked on executive, operational, and consultative sides of technology companies in the ed tech and transportation industry. But over time here in Los Angeles and nationwide, she's asserted her worldview and become a trusted leader in reshaping the venture capital industry landscape with a focus on empowering underrepresented founders and making impactful investments across multiple industries. She's a dutiful auntie on every level that you can be an auntie in today's society. She's a proud, loving sister, daughter, a lover of cooking, yoga, and just frankly, in my opinion, probably just good people. And I would say if this phrase that I'm about to use hadn't been co-opted to only describe men throughout the course of literature, I would describe her as a true Renaissance woman. Which I think is a better version of that statement anyway. So I'm super excited to welcome my friend Qiana, this true Renaissance woman, to Entrepreneurial Thinkers today. Hi, buddy.
Hey friend, how are you?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
It's a good day for a Friday, and it's
I like
even
that.
better day as a Friday and spending the afternoon with you and all your listeners and viewers.
I love it. Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. It is, it won't meet, what I'm about to say won't mean as much when this episode eventually releases because it'll be not timely. But today in Los Angeles, she's comfortably at home. I'm comfortably at home here in the kitchen studio. But apparently outside, there's going to be like traffic madness tonight because
They
in
call
this,
it Armageddon, like
right?
Eventmageddon or something to that effect. Because
I don't think it's as big a deal as everybody seems to be thinking it is. But I mean, I just think it's a busy Friday night in LA, and there's always a lot of people going to a lot of places. So
yeah,
so it is that crazy day. The World Series is tonight. There's all kinds of stuff kicking off. So that's I'm glad that we're talking to each other comfortably in the safety of our homes right now. So first question, I gotta start us here because I think it talks to a little bit of the second part of the bio that I shared. Why today are we going to talk a lot about tech and venture investment, and why aren't you just the most successful middle school administrator in the history of the LA Unified School District?
it's a really good question. I like to stretch you and your thinkers a bit. I probably would be one of the best and most prolific superintendents if I had stayed in education. I'm just claiming that now.
Right?
But if we just sort of bring it down to earth, I think what I like to tell people is that I started out being a teacher really young, right? And, after 7 years of being an educator, I knew that I loved being an educator. I knew also that I was really good at it. But
That's
what I
that's
didn't,
that's pretty impressive and
yeah,
unique, right? In your mid to late 20s to
mhm.
to have that sense of self.
Yeah. And you know what I didn't know? I didn't know if I was better at something else. And I was young enough at that time in my life that I could try something else. And if I failed at it, I could always go back to being an educator. But I had the freedom and the desire to try something else and wasn't really, really too afraid of failure. I actually called it. I said, if I fail, I can go back. There is always a school that will be open and ready to take on another super enthusiastic amazing teacher who can connect with students, right? And so that's what led me in search of what I thought could potentially be something that I could be better at, and I didn't know what it was at that time. I had that drive in me. Yeah.
I'm curious, and I've never asked you this before. Do you think part of the success that you found in the next chapters was rooted in that confidence that you had already, that like you knew you were that good at one thing, and so therefore that kind of, obviously you already alluded to it, gave you some freedom, it gave you some intellectual freedom, obviously probably professional, financial freedom and flexibility to be able to explore. But like, do you think in a deeper level, do you think there was just a confidence that came that kind of made you feel like I'm probably going to be really good at the next thing I do, or did you, or were you more just purely exploratory?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I No, I can't say for certain that I had some sort of superhuman confidence about like going out and trying something when I had no model. I had no model, I had no guide, there was no playbook for what I was at that time getting ready to do. And I don't think it was like I said, any type of superhuman confidence that I had. I just didn't know, really what failure could look like, right? And I think
Yeah.
that because I wasn't exactly sure what failure could look like, the fear that I had, although it was big, it wasn't bigger than my desire to try something else. And so, I would like to think of myself as a really super confident person who just like goes out into this world and climbs, mountains every single day. But the truth is that I'm like everybody else. I have like real fear. I have real trepidation about the next foot forward, oftentimes. And because none of us have lived the next day ever before, like it's all new for me every single day, right? I'm bringing along, obviously, the tricks of the trade, or I'm bringing along with me lessons learned. And when I think about it, what I brought with me was that it's really hard, really, really hard to manage a classroom with a bee trapped inside of it. Just visualize that. A classroom
I
of
just did.
35, 40 kids in one classroom, and you don't know who is allergic to a bee sting at that very moment. right?
That,
So
like I was with you even just to the point of saying like she's right. It's difficult to manage 30 to 40 like sixth graders, but then you take it to another level, like 30 to 40 sixth graders plus a bumblebee.
yeah, yeah, and you don't know who's allergic, and you don't
Right,
know if where the closest, anaphylactic, shot is at that moment,
right,
right?
right.
And so, I think I did have a level of like confidence of like, if I can manage a group of students, right? 11 and 12-year-olds, and then when I became a dean, 2,500 kids, and managing discipline and behavior in one of the largest middle schools in our county, then I felt like, there might be
Yeah,
a few more things that I can do,
good for
with my
you.
career. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's a parallel related, but different experiences. Obviously, teachers or parents. But I've often said, I say it a lot, that most of the things that people attribute to me as like business skills, right, or that I'm good at in my professional life, are really just parenting lessons.
Yeah.
Like both things that I absorbed from my parents, and if people as they know my history, like then things that I took from that and just
Yeah.
applied to trying to be a single parent to my daughter for most of her life, and like I've just applied that to real life.
Isn't that an amazing lesson? Because I think oftentimes when we get into the business world, right, we're told, read this, do this. There's this like excellent, in most cases, man who's written this amazing book, and this is how you're supposed to, win friends and have influence. And this is how, these are the best questions you should ask. And this is strategy, and
Yeah.
go to war. And really, I think what we are experiencing, sort of my general philosophy is like, we are all having a human experience.
100%.
All of us are human, living a very difficult human experience. And I don't care if you are an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, or you're a 55-year-old engineer woman. Like, we are all having this shared human experience at this given time. How lucky are we to live in this time and place, given everything that is going on? We are a chosen few of people who have survived, who weathered this storm, who are here right now and today. And I think that really, that building block, as you put it, was like, for you, it was like being a parent, and it was being a son and having those
Yep.
experiences. And for me, it's sort of like the same thing, being a daughter and having those experiences growing
Yep.
up, and then being almost like a surrogate parent, right?
And that's the comparison I'm
Right?
making, right? Is because
Right.
you take those experiences then into a classroom where you are,
Yes.
however we describe it, like you are that adult role model
That's
again,
right.
right? It's your job to model behaviors
That's right.
and help, and you're shaping young people in much the same way, parents and
Right, and at the same time, I think this is the important thing. I'm being shaped. It's not a one thing. It's not that I'm shaping them. They are also shaping me, and I credit, not that I was a teacher, I credit that I had the incredible luck and honor of a lifetime to spend time at a critical moment with children that I could learn from, because it made me be a better human, right? It made me realize that we have emotions, we have feelings, we have a story to tell, we want to be heard, we have a desire to be valued. And that doesn't change from whether you're an 11-year-old or you're an 111-year-old. We are all human, and we all want to have value, and we want to be heard, and we want to be respected. And that manifests itself in different forms and different experiences, but that's the root of us as humans. And
yeah,
so
100%.
I'm incredibly lucky to carry that forward with me in anything that I've done.
There you go. You're the Renaissance woman that I just described. This is a great start. All right. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show actually belies what makes a good, simple podcast, which is that I didn't want to just talk to you about one thing. Like,
Yeah.
because you, in my experience with you, like you live at the intersection of a dozen different, like really important things, if not on a daily basis. Like literally, these are issues that you really care about, that affect the rest of us, that we all really care about, and you've crossed paths with them at least over the course of your career, if not still on a regular basis because of the investment work that you do. Like you touch tech, you touch transportation, you touch policy in general, you touch education, you touch venture investing, the whole topic of inclusion in all those other things that we just talked about. You're very focused on socioeconomic inequality, disparities in our health. existence, like our how we live as healthily as we can, and also how we like, share and distribute healthcare and health and wellness in our society. You talk about even things like our recent guest, another friend of yours, Erica Lucas, talked about the new economy, right? Like, so you talk about all of this. So I want to pitch it to you a little bit, a little unconventional approach today to get started. Of all these things, like, what do you think the three or four biggest societal threats or opportunities, we don't have to be in the negative, are that are facing us today out of all these things that you interact with?
Um, Biggest threats? I think the biggest threat that we face, or big challenge that we face, is that we don't or haven't figured out a way for people to live and work to their highest potential. That we haven't figured out a way to remove um, the biggest stumbling blocks, the biggest barriers, so that people can be the next greatest, enter whatever it is that you want. And I think that is the challenge of a lifetime, for us to figure out how do we remove those stumbling blocks so that people can work to their highest, create, imagine, wonder to their highest potential. Because when you remove those things, when you remove the pressure of enter whatever it is, right? Eating and sleeping and having a roof over your head and all of those things, you actually have the freedom to wonder, to create, to imagine. And I relish in the idea that we could remove those barriers, and what we would create as a result, what would be created by the most amazing, brilliant minds that we just don't know exist right now, because there's the pressure to enter whatever it is, right? Eat, shelter, clothe, whatever it is. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that I think we face.
Yeah.
Pause.
Is it fair to say apply that, then take that and then apply that to more of us, like more people? So widen it out. And now we're talking about like social inequities, right? Discrimination, all these, the
Yeah,
larger things that
obviously.
are,
Yeah,
but yeah,
obviously,
right.
because
Yeah.
then we know, then you get to the deeper levels and the deeper layers of, why are there barriers? Why are there structural barriers? Why are there visible barriers? Why are there invisible barriers? What are those gaps that have been created and maintained? Sometimes it's created and maintained because it's a gender or a race thing or a geography thing or all these kinds of things. So if we could loosen ourselves from those sort of things that we imagine the world is supposed to be like, right?
Yeah.
Based on social structures that we have been ingrained in our head, and we've sort of like codified in legislation or non-legislation. But if we could loosen ourselves from those things, I think that we would live in a world, not in a city or a state or a country, but we would like live in such a the most sort of dynamic sort of time and place, I think, in probably human existence.
Yeah. That's our ultimate potential, right?
Yeah.
So is it then also fair to apply this pursuit of our highest potential and in your work across technology and investing and all these fields that you have your hands into? Is it fair to say then, like, one of the things that gets you jazzed and fired up in the morning is the idea of pursuing that highest potential in how we look at transportation, or in how we look at healthcare, or in how we innovate in use AI and other technologies to better educate and make more information accessible in more way? Like, is it fair that kind of you have this driving principle and then you just apply it in all these different kind of
That's right.
areas of our lives?
That's right. I wake up really excited, one, to practice yoga, but two, to try to remove a barrier from someone. It could be a founder that I've invested in, right? It could be in, someone I'm mentoring. It could be in with one of my colleagues. I really do wake up thinking, what barrier can I remove today from someone? and what sort of connections I can make. I like to think of, myself and certainly humans like you as being the ultimate sort of like not just people connector, but what we're trying to drive these connections and this synergy so that there can be like this massive, amazing thing that sort of breathes or lives out of that a thing, that connection, that human connection. And so for me, everything that I touch is really, really about how do I actually remove a barrier and what would become of that? Not for me, not for the accolade for me that someone can point and say, hey, you did this thing, but it's like that person gets to shine, that person gets to levitate a little bit more each and every day.
Yeah, you are, and I've always found it fascinating about you and our friendship is because you are, and even evidenced by folks that will watch this on our YouTube channel. You have a beautiful, like bright green blouse on, right? Like you pop out of life, like in the way that you carry yourself, and yet you are very much not in not seeking the spotlight.
No,
Like you're not in pursuit of that. Like
no,
if it comes, it comes, but it's then just an extra bit of energy that you can use to diffuse amongst other people around you,
that's
which
right. That's
is
right.
funny, right? Because we make so many choices in our lives in how we interact with people based on like our perceptions and our first impressions or those types of or externalities, right? And so your externality belies like the fact that you are actually like the greatest facilitator as opposed to the greatest star.
I love being, in the cut. I love like that magic can happen. I like to say that I want to be the person that says your name in a room that you don't know exists,
Yeah.
and when it comes back around to you, you might not even know it was me, right? Because for me it isn't about like, does someone know that I said your name or did something for you, but did the thing happen, right? And the biggest joy that I get is when those things that you really needed, you need fundamentally needed as a founder, as a co-investor, that did that thing happen for you. And I want to always anchor and root myself in that. And I can say to all of your viewers and followers and subscribers that I'm actually an introvert. So I, again,
Yeah.
like you said, I
Yeah.
don't seek out the limelight. I'm sort of propelled, there, not always by choice.
Right.
So it oftentimes looks comfortable for me because I can do it,
Yep.
but the root of me is really an introvert, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why
No,
I
it's
think that synergy between, oh, I wanna say people's name, I wanna help people, I wanna sit back, I wanna listen, I wanna figure out what is the secret sauce here, who can I connect in my mind, and where people really need help and support, and then push that forward.
yep. No,
Yeah,
that's a really accurate description of you. Okay, so let's talk about how your work gets you involved in all these different things, right? So we alluded to in your bio, and you can tell us about all the things that you're working on and who you're working with now. But I alluded to in your bio, right? You've worked in the family office space for
yeah,
years in different capacities. You obviously had a prior life where you worked in technology company on the operational side, but today's world where you're known right as an investor
yeah,
and or working on behalf of investors. I know you're working with. I alluded to it again with our friend Marie at
yep,
Realist Labs with
yep,
East Coast West Coast thing. We're super
mhm,
proud about building that bridge. So talk to us about kind of like what you're working on, who you're working with right now, and
yeah.
then how it keeps you plugged into all these different areas that are important to you.
Yeah, I mean, so every day I wake up and, for all intent purposes, my title is an investor, and that does span a couple of different structures. But for your audience, like I literally am an investor. And right now the focus is managing an existing portfolio that I have. And supporting what I like to consider to imagine sort of this longevity. Like, what is the longevity of the innovation economy, where investors in the public sector and the private sector sort of inner are interwoven together. I don't think that any of those things can actually happen, or innovation and innovation economy and investing in this new majority economy will happen in silos. And so I wake up every morning trying to figure out and thinking about supporting my existing portfolio founders, but also figuring out where is the synergy where we can actually expand and invest in more founders all across this country to really spur innovation. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I do, right? And it's like
That is literally what you do. In case,
that's what I do.
and it's funny, great, because some people, I think the industry of investors, right, is so kind of particularly branded and particularly presents itself in very almost boringly predictable ways that, by the way, has been basically the same for like the last 30 years, right? And you don't present yourself that way, and so I think in some sense maybe the public perception is like you're a bit of an enigma, right?
Mhm.
Like what exactly is she
Right.
up to,
And I
right?
love that. I mean, we're alluding to like, well, why is she so secretive about it? And it's not that I'm actually
Not
secretive
at
about
all.
it. If I have a company that had just announced their $75 million
Yep.
Series C yesterday, I'm not quiet about that.
Nope.
But I think what it is that if I have that sort of like, oh, she's sort of like this enigma, right? It's that I have not followed the rules, right?
Exactly.
Everything about my story up until this point is like I actually don't fit. I don't fit the model, right? I like to
Yep.
joke now and says, "Yep, I was a part of the teacher to venture capitalist pipeline." Well, people are gonna like have a hearty laugh on that because they're gonna like, "Well, does that exist?" And the reality is, no, it actually really doesn't exist. But here
Right.
I am. I'm sitting in front of all of you, and I can actually say that, right? And I think the next layer is because venture capitalists, by and large, they've had the loudest megaphone. They become stars in themselves. They're the bigger star than their portfolio founders and CEOs and things like that.
There's something wrong with that.
Well, it seems so weird, right? And I'm like, no, no, no. I am not the belle of the ball. I am not the most important person in the room. It is all of you who are solving some of the world's biggest challenges, who should be the ones that we are in some ways idolizing, not me, right? Not the fact that I've picked you or chosen to invest in you. And so I think that's the part that drives some people a bit crazy because I'm not on a megaphone yelling at the, everybody to say, here, 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 listen to me. It really is about like, how do I root myself in supporting innovation, right? And spurring innovation in a way that actually fundamentally shifts people's lives and whole communities' lives. How do we solve a problem? I tell people all the time, I'm not interested in band-aids. We have a lot of band-aids, a lot. But I'm sorry, if I have cancer, right? You can't give me a band-aid that will help me. A band-aid will not be enough. And I believe that we have a lot of cancers, types of cancers in the world. And I'm not interested in just putting a band-aid on it. I'm interested in really trying to solve those things. Listen, Rob, I'm not going to be the one to solve all those things.
Right.
I need to find and select people who really are going after those big, hairy problems and solving some of those challenges. And that's what I want to do. And it doesn't require me to be a celebrity. It just
No, I love that. I saw you posted about something, or someone posted it about you in the last couple of days, and you were on the stage with someone. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but you can correct me. With someone, a woman who I think was representing like a big fund from the state, right, from the
Oh,
state of California, like maybe even a pension fund or something like that.
yeah.
And what grabbed my attention and that you've set the frame for me now to be able to ask this is like, to me that seems like that was classic you, as I know you, like bridging the gaps between, say, like, well, there's this whole other traditional world of finance, right, and there's these big industrial sized
Mhm.
institutional, like basically country sized fund managers, and those monies typically go only over here because of these silos that have been created over the last 50 years. And here you were, in a community site here in Los Angeles doing what you do, which is bridging this conversation and having this. So if you could tell us what that was and tell us a little bit about why that was important.
Yeah, it was, California is the fifth largest economy in the world, right? We can
Cheers to
all
us.
we
Yeah.
can we can agree on that. Fifth largest economy in the world,
Yep.
right? And I had the distinguished honor and, quite frankly, pleasure to be sitting down with the Honorable State Controller Malia Cohen. She is effectively California's CFO. She happens to be a Black woman, right? And she was so gracious with her time to come out to LA during LA Tech Week as a way to cap off LA Tech Week, amongst a group of about 50 or so women of color who happen to be also be in investors. And I really wanted to catalyze and bring together a group of folks that, one, we centered. We prioritized. We wanted to hear. We wanted to learn. We wanted to listen. We want to value these women who do extraordinary with so little, and have someone like State Controller Malia Cohen to be in front of us talking about the fact, like you said, not only is she California CFO, but she also sits on the boards of both CalPERS and CalSTRS, two of the largest pensions in the world, not in the state, not in the
Yeah,
country,
in the
in
world.
the world.
Yeah, essentially like sovereign wealth funds.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And she sits on those boards. She's on the investment committees. So it's important for us to have time with her, to listen to where is the intersection between policy and legislation as it pertains to innovating our economy and ensuring that our economy can grow and get better, and while being inclusive, and while looking at the data around fund managers. Women fund managers typically are more capital efficient. Like women founders are more capital efficient. They get to revenue faster. They have higher amounts of revenue. That women outlive men in many demographics. We spend 4 times as much as men in healthcare. We make 80% of all buying decisions in the home. like these are things that move economies forward. Notice how I didn't say this is how we move women forward,
Right.
anything
Right.
like
No.
that. Like, we are moving entire and shifting entire economies forward for the better. And one thing I like to say, a woman who was at one point in time, the highest woman in banking ever, Sally Krawcheck, she said, nothing bad happens when women have more money. And I started saying that, and then I started adding on to that, and everything gets better.
So,
Everything.
all right. So let's talk about that a little bit further, right? Because I was going to ask a question. We've already kind of answered it, so now I want to pull it apart a little bit more, right? Because this exact intersection that we're standing in conversationally is the place that you and I cross paths the most often, right? In our lives together as friends, right? And it's inside of this community of undersupported entrepreneurs and investors.
Yeah.
More often than not, people of color and women, right? And so if I heard you correctly, and like just for the shout it for the people in the back of the room listening, right? I was going to ask why it's important to empower and amplify these people. But if I just heard you, essentially the punchline of that is because it improves the economy or improves economic conditions for everybody.
For everyone. For everyone, literally for everyone, right?
Yeah.
There's this data point that the two happiest groups of people in our society are, one, married men, men who are oftentimes married to women, but not always, but married men, and single women, right? And that we live longer. And so I do think that there's this desire for us to really make really amazing good decisions, both as fund managers, being investors. We oftentimes we have less capital to deploy than others, as you alluded to, right?
Yep.
So we
Right.
have to be more efficient. We have to be more diligent. We just have to be better at everything. And then what drives us is like making really great decisions, and oftentimes things that we have dealt with ourselves or that we've seen in our community, and we see things as a net positive, not a net negative. We can see the layers, like, well, if I fund this, but then what would happen if that happened? So, like, we just look at things so dramatically different. And oftentimes that's with the aperture, this very wide aperture of actually helping everyone. right?
Yeah.
And so, like, why wouldn't we want to empower and give more women our equal share, right? Literally our equal share, and bake it into the fact that the data actually says we actually make really good founders. We make really good investors, right?
Yeah.
And we actually return capital more. So my thing is, well, that just makes sense, right? That just makes the perfect sense. And so
Yeah.
I always want to push for the levers that can actually promote and get people to really root themselves in that.
Yeah, hugely important. And also, it's kind of the irony of this new majority economy that you refer to, which we just made the argument is essentially is the mainstream economy,
It is the
right?
mainstream.
Yet, even though it is mainstream in that sense, those those particular characters that we're talking about, underrepresented women, women of color, et cetera, as players on the entrepreneurial space or in the investor space, still have so many sociocultural barriers and obstacles set up against them that you feel like, okay, hey, even though I can rattle off the stats and I should be able to easily convince you that this is the economy. I still got to stand on top of the mountaintop and shout these people out. I got to lift them
Right,
up. I got to speak their names in rooms that they're not on. I got to make that part of who I am, because if I don't amplify these people, there's too many of them are never going to get the chance.
that's
Like,
right.
too many of them are going to fail. Too many of them are never going to be able to get above the water line. And so it's this interesting balance, right? It's kind of like a duh. Like, you rattle off all those stats about women, and I'm like, just give you the keys. Just
Right,
like, why do you not have all the power if that's all the output that you're creating? But the truth of it is, like, you still don't, because the
right,
system was rigged against you. And so therefore you and I meet in this interesting juxtaposition of the world saying, like, we've got to do everything we can to amplify and tell these stories and mention these women and get these people of color, of either male men or women, into these rooms, because the system is set up to just not send the invite to them.
right, right. And I tell people all the time that I'm never ever going to be satisfied with an invite. It is not enough to be invited to the party for me. I There are three things that I'm focused on as an introvert, right? You got to be invited to the party, but I want to be in the right room at the right time having the right conversation. And if those three things cannot happen, then I don't fundamentally believe that I belong there, right? That again, my job and how I wake up every morning is to remove a barrier, right? Remove a barrier so that someone else can work to their highest and create to their highest potential. If I'm
Yeah.
not doing that, I'm not living up to my purpose, right? And I think that it is not about just success. It is not really just about winning at all cost. It is not just crossing the finish line. I believe that we all, and I'm sure you've had this conversation with plenty of entrepreneurs on your podcast, is what I want is I want the chance for people to all equally fail, because I think that's important as well. That I want the chance to fail and be able to get back up again. But we know that we have structural things in our society that make failure really, really hard, that raise the barrier for risk aversion to be much, much higher in so many people who essentially, have so many more barriers in front of them. And so if I can and we can think about, like, what does it look like to fail and what does it look like to then get back up again? Remember where we started? I didn't know what I could do post being an educator,
Right.
but I wasn't really concerned overly about failure. I wanted the chance to fail at something, because then I would learn, well, maybe this is what you're supposed to be doing. Right. And that over and over and over again is really, I think, again, part of the human experience. None of us are living a perfect life. None of us will have a perfect life. We will make missteps along the way. We will trip and we will fall, and that you will fall off the bike and you will get back up and you will learn lessons. And I think that we should create a space and ecosystems that allow for failure to happen, and oftentimes be celebrated as well too, because we learn so much from it. And so while I'm into amplifying all the winners and the successes and know what the data says, I'm also saying, and we can't be perfect at the same time.
Yeah, amen to that. There are people that you and I have in common who will remain unnamed at this moment, who have said to me when I've invited them back onto the show years after maybe their original appearance when they were doing that thing that they thought defined them then. And they've literally said, like sheepishly, no, I don't think I should come on. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, first of all, like that's my job is to
Yeah.
figure out if you should come on or not.
Yeah.
And trust me, if I'm inviting you back on, there's a story in you that I know needs to be told. And oh, by the way, hint hint, like me telling it with you publicly is going to also help encourage you,
Yeah.
right? And so like and it's because people get tied so deeply into their identities, and then if there is a failure, right, that failure was not part of their plan, and then they
That's
feel
right.
like, well, why would you want to talk to me? I'm not
That's
the
right.
latest person du jour.
That's right.
And
That's right.
it's like that's not that's and that's again that's selfishly, as Deanna and I always joke, like, hey, it's my fucking show, so we can do whatever I want with this. Like, and my purpose of this is that this is the whole point of this show is to have these conversations that are different than just the
Yeah.
everyday, like, let's highlight the winners of the week kind of stories that everybody else does. So I'm
I like
deep.
that. I like that approach because I think that what we find is that people are okay with, failing, but what they want is they want to tack on triumph. Right? And some people that you've interacted with, you've had, and whatever stage they're on, they probably just don't believe that they're at the stage where they have triumphed that failure. And
Yep.
part of this experience and this experiment that we're all living in and under is that we believe that failure means then immediately triumph after it. Like I learned my lesson and now like
Yep.
I lost 1 million and now I made 1 billion. But maybe you're still sitting in that like, damn, I lost $1 million. Right. And that's okay, right? In terms of like, your company went to zero or whatever. Everybody wants a feel good triumph story. Nobody wants to tell the story of like the idea that I had, as great as it was, either was too early, too late, too small, too big. People didn't believe it was a big enough problem. People weren't willing
Yep.
to pay for it, like all those things,
And
right?
those are all healthy explorations of, again,
All healthy.
the underlying thesis here, which is I want to explore your journey as an entrepreneurial thinker.
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't even necessarily, you talked about the wideness of the aperture before, right? Like that, in my definition of this conversation or platform that I've created, it's I want to, there are entrepreneurial thinkers who aren't entrepreneurs, who
That's
aren't investors, who are school administrators in
right.
LAUSD,
Absolutely.
who are politicians, who are policymakers, who are doctors, nurses, et cetera. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a
Absolutely.
really important lesson for people to learn. All right, so we're both sitting here on the opposite ends of Los Angeles today. I want to talk a little bit about LA and kind of from your perspective, right? You and I have talked about this first part of this before, which is this idea that, like, across the world of venture capital and in those underrepresented, undersupported categories we just referred to, the historic percentage of capital that goes to those people is just ridiculously low. So we're not going to get caught up in those percentages, but I'll just generically say, like, for example, right, if there was a group that only gets 1%, like here in LA, that group gets like 2 or 3%, right? If there's another group that only gets 0.5%, like here in LA, that group might get 1.5%.
Yeah.
And while those numbers seem like embarrassingly like meaningless, to me, I've always looked at them as like significant over indexing, that we're doing a better job of serving a more diverse group of entrepreneurial creators and investors here than gets done in other markets. All still woefully not enough,
Right.
right? Obviously, to your
Right.
broader point.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit, and we may disagree on this. I'm completely cool with that. Like, talk to me a little bit about, like, I think that LA, in its goodness and its badness, like, but one of the things we have at our core is we're just wildly diverse. I
Yeah.
think we're intuitively accepting of different people from different places who come with like kind of big dreams and ideas. And I think that's kind of a template or a model for how other places can be, or how other places can over index and better serve these communities. So I'd be curious, like, do you agree about that? What do you think differently about that? And then, what do you think we're doing here well that more folks could replicate? And then what do we need to do better?
Yeah, I probably I would tend to agree with you to some degree. I think the beauty about Los Angeles in itself, right, fundamentally, and it's been this way for quite some time, is that Los Angeles is the epicenter for people coming and being someone that they're not, which is the essence of Hollywood, right?
Right. Yeah.
Literally, people come to Los Angeles to be people and things that they are not, and they are paid to do that. What better place to come to build your startup, your company, to ingratiate yourself, to learn, to pull, than a place like Los Angeles?
Hey, neither you or I are from here originally,
I'm not from here.
right?
I love the juxtaposition that you could surf in the morning and you could be skiing if it's not for climate change, but
Yeah, right.
you
Well,
could
yeah, right.
you could surf, at 5 in the morning before the sunrise, and you could be skiing by the afternoon. What is the juxtaposition of
Right.
that is just super, super amazing. And I think that is the microcosm of like, wow, lots of things. If you imagine, some of the top universities and the country are here. Like all of these facts, it's vibrant, it's amazing to live in. You can go from one community to another. People always say, like, what do you love about Los Angeles? And I'm like, I love the fact that I can go 2 miles, 3 miles, I can close my eyes and open up, and I can see a new
Yeah.
thing, a
It's
different
it's
thing.
it's 90 different neighborhoods.
It's amazing, and it's exciting, and it's creative, and it's inspiring. So I think I'm really jazzed about that. What I think I'm not so jazzed about is, given all of that, right? Transportation obviously could be better. You're like the king of, I think, of like not letting anything, like nothing, like stop you from getting to a place, right? And I've taken on that same sort of thing. Like, I have no qualms about going to the east side, going downtown, I was in Irvine yesterday. I have no qualms about that, because I'm just like, I don't want to be stuck in one place. I don't think that the west side has commodified all the brilliance, all the
Yeah,
talent, all
right.
the creativity, all the problem solving. So I'm uniquely, excited about going to different communities, listening and learning and understanding, and just taking a seat back and learning from
Yeah,
other people. And that's the most exciting thing that I think that we can get from here. You've got space tech, you've got bio, you've got, CPG and consumer, you've got entertainment, you've got gaming. I
yep.
mean, what a transportation, like the second largest school district in the nation, ed tech could be popping off. I mean, what could not happen here?
I think I,
Literally,
I,
what
I think I
could not
read
happen here?
I read a statistic a couple years ago that sliced it and said, if you listed like the top 30 industries or top 30 industrial categories in the world, like just these are the big industries in the world, LA's place in those industries across all 30 of those categories is like somewhere in the top three in each one,
Yeah,
right?
so
And so it's just, yeah,
I'm totally excited about it, and at the same time, I'm super, super excited about knowing that LA and New York and SF don't own anything. They don't own genius, they don't own ingenuity, they don't own innovation.
yeah.
It is not something that can be owned. I believe that genius and creativity is equally spread across zip code, region, but opportunity is not. What
Agreed,
happens
100%.
when you remove the barrier so that people can reach their full potential and get to that opportunity?
So
Massive.
in this prior question, right? I alluded to like the small percentages of venture capital that go to certain segments of entrepreneurs. We all, everybody knows that. Everybody that listens to the show knows that times 10. So I want to shift it a little bit and kind of segue from what we were just talking about, right? So we know that venture capital can be this incredible tool for like this very narrow, specific type of entrepreneur, right? That are building a very specific type of company. But we also know the inverse of that is that probably 97% of the entrepreneurial economy in the world is not suited to venture capital. Combined with that like 96% of our United States, US economy is fueled by small businesses who are like employees with like 10 or fewer
Yeah,
employees. So, you just sat on stage and facilitated a conversation with a woman from these huge pension funds, the CFO of our state, right? And you and I live in communities where we go walk and, we're interacting with supporting entrepreneurs all the time, all day, every day. And 97% of them are not startup, tech
that's right.
fueled, venture backable. So I would be curious, because of the breadth of conversations that you get to have with other people, like what other types of capital solutions or policies around access to capital might we either invent, right, together, or can we improve upon to try and fuel more of what you and I have already discussed is like hugely important to kind of the economy as a whole, like more diverse investment, more investment into more diverse people. Like what
Yeah,
types of other capital solutions are there that we should
I
be
am
thinking about?
super excited about non-dilutive capital. Our friends over at Slauson and Co. with their friends and family, certainly Pledge LA and our Founders Fund. Non-dilutive capital is really great, and we can see that happening across the country. I'm also really, really keen on empowering and started having some conversations with folks who actually want to empower CDFIs, community development finance institutions,
Okay, thank you for
to
that. I've never heard that before. Thank you.
to CDF
CDFI.
CDFIs, help CDFIs actually think like investors, right? So as opposed to thinking of like investing or loaning money to businesses, small and medium sized businesses that are in their communities, and they're looking at spreadsheets and pro formas and all those kinds of things, that we could train someone entity could train CDFI potentials to actually look at and vet and due diligence on community based companies that could take on funding at an early stage. So essentially, could a CDFI be an early stage investor? Could that money turn into equity? Could that money turn into a forgivable loan, right? And so, what are the creative things that we can do at that intersection of community development and economic development that actually could propel people forward? I think we did some amazing things during, one of the worst times of our history, with COVID, around the SBA loans and sort of taking away the requirement that you'd have to put your home up, right? As leverage for an SBA loan. So I think some of that creativity around that, and then I think educating founders. Like again, I said we've spent the last 50 years sort of idolizing venture capitalists.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back. I want us to start thinking about who are these inventors, these creators, these startup founders, and how do we support them? So how do we educate them on non-dilutive capital, whether it's revenue-based financing, whether it's like, as you said, small and medium-sized business equipment-based financing. It's what kind of SBA loans could they get? And how do you, I was literally talking to a founder who's building in the RV park space, an innovative model around RV and glamping. And she was like, well, you can't use an SBA loan to buy RVs because they're seen as vehicles, right? They're not like attached. But I was like, but you do a lot of refurbishing and other things. So could you use an SBA loan for the refurbishing and the rehab of things that you need to do for the land that you're going to occupy in terms of the leasing and the power and the water? And she's like, I hadn't even thought about that. So I think there's a creative space that we are operating in that we need better technical assistance. And I think like an example of that is Realist Lab out of Connecticut, which is taking this old concept of technical assistance and bringing it into the 21st century, and really thinking about what are tech founders, and small retail shops, whether it's a yoga studio, a bookstore, whatever it is, a coffee shop. How do we sort of embody and help these founders and these small businesses really sort of pull down capital that's really smart and patient and efficient? I believe, Rob, I fundamentally believe that we have all the tools. It isn't
Yeah.
something that we actually have to make up. We just have to reimagine the deployment of that. We just have to go, someone has to say, oh, I didn't know we could do that, But can we do that? And in most cases, the answer is like, yeah, you could do it. It's just no one had ever done it before. So
Yeah,
I love
that's a
I love
beautiful way
sort
to
of
put it.
having those conversations with people around that. And like I said, there are some efforts and some conversations that I'm in around helping CFIs and widening the aperture of technical assistance and getting really creative around deploying capital that can help but also be a net positive for community development, economic shifting of entire communities. And so, yeah,
It's
that's
fascinating.
where I'm at.
No, it's fascinating. I think I know that glamping founder that you're talking about.
I think you do.
A fun side story, which you'll appreciate because you'll have the connectivity between people in disparate ways. But so we had a guest, which will be a future episode coming up that I just interviewed a couple 2 weeks ago, who this young woman here in Los Angeles, knows that person we're referring to, and they were both in the REI
Yes.
accelerator program at the same time, and they like love each other, and
Yeah.
it's like that's an awesome
Yeah.
point of connection.
Yeah.
Young, diverse women of color who are trying to upend the outdoor recreation space, which is just incredible. So fascinating how we're all connected. All right, a couple of personal kind of Qiana questions before we get to our last question. We'll close it out today to get you on your busy Friday way. But you wrote something in a blog post or journal that you probably never thought 4 years later someone like me would bring up on a podcast, but it was beautiful and it really caught my attention. You wrote it in a moment of some trauma that you were going through personally, inside of a moment of global trauma that we were all going through during the pandemic. And you said that this quote, "There's a very good reason it's you or it's me." And essentially, like, there's a reason that each of us exist and that we're here to do our thing in the scheme of kind of our lives and our careers. You've repeatedly encouraged me as a friend in that way, to see that truth in myself, and I see it in how you treat others, how you interact with others. Like, talk to me about why that fundamental belief that again, like, that there's a very good reason it's you or it's me. Talk to me about why that is so important to you.
I think, and I know exactly the post you're talking about. You know, I I think that I am living an improbable dream. I am sitting here on a Friday in Los Angeles on a podcast with Rob Ryan, who's doing phenomenal entrepreneurial thinking type work all across the globe. And I think about the reality that the odds statistically, I shouldn't be here. I think statistically, if we're just looking at brass tack numbers and the data, right, I actually shouldn't be on this podcast with you. Um, but what I keep on, and I have gone over and over, because there are times in my life where I think I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I haven't had the right, sort of, upbringing, or I didn't have the right education. I didn't go into the right career. So I can tell myself all these things of why not me? Why not? Why not me? There's a laundry list of why it shouldn't be me. And then in that moment, I said, why not me? It's a very, very good chance, right? That it should be me, and it should be you, and it should be all of us. And I just keep on coming back to that over and over. There's a very good reason why it should be me.
Right. And what a powerful lesson, born of your own very personal experiences and perspective. Like, what a powerful lesson to pass along, not to be able to pass along, because you do pass it along every day,
Yeah.
to the other investors that you work with, to the entrepreneurs that you're, young or old, first time, second, 10th time, like, right, to remind them, all of us, to remind us, thank you,
Yeah.
I'm part of this, I'm part of your world, right, to remind us of that. What a gift, that is, again, born of your own self doubts and your own exploration of who you were as a woman, as a person of color, just as in your career, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's incredible. All right, so I'm going to finish with this before we do our last kind of closing question, which is always kind of a little bit more specific and actionable for our listeners to take away and see how they can apply some lessons. But last personal question. So these are my words. I think you are what I call a pragmatic optimist. I've defined myself as a pragmatic optimist for about 15-ish years. And when I first said it, then I came up with the definition. And the definition is that I think it's someone who's deeply aware of the conditions on the ground around us, but who chooses to lean into the possible. I think it's what makes people that are good operators good operators. I think it's what makes good entrepreneurs good entrepreneurs. I think it's what makes good policymakers good policymakers. I think you are that. And so I'd be curious, do you think you are that? And then the more important question that I'm curious about, what are you most optimistic about in our future as we go forward?
I probably would agree that I'm a pragmatic optimist. I'm a realist. Um, but I think that we are living in for in most cases an improbable time, and we're just so lucky to be here. And I'd rather be optimistic than dreadful about the future today, tomorrow, right? I Life is short, it's fleeting, and it feels so much better to be optimistic about the future, and not just be optimistic about it, but to do something about
There's the
it.
pragmatic side. Yep.
To do something and to make sure that we're all and we can all be optimistic about the future. And I think, what am I optimistic about? Um, I'm optimistic about taking a really deep breaths every day and knowing that we will, whatever happens, be able to think, do, create, and imagine a more perfect world, a more perfect union. And it takes time and it takes energy and it takes people like you and me. And that's why I keep on going back to why not you? Why not me? It should be you. It should be me. And I think that we're not the only ones. There's a lot of us out there. And so I'm optimistic that we will all find the light inside of us to be optimistic and to do something. And that's what presses me and propels me forward.
Amen. Amen to that, Sister Qiana. Last question. What are 2 or 3 ways that leaders, and this could be in tech or in venture, can create more inclusive teams, or put a different way, kind of foster greater representation in their communities? What are 2 or 3 very specific things that leaders can do?
Extend your social capital. Number one is just like figure out the definition of what social capital is, because I don't think enough people know what it is. So define that, get the definition for that. And then once you know the definition of that, find every chance possible to extend it to someone else. That's it.
Awesome. And if you're not sure what the definition of that is, just text or call Qiana or I, and we will explain to you what the
That's it.
definition is,
That's
and
it.
then go use that.
So go use it. Go spread it.
Awesome. Speak those names of people into the rooms that you are not in.
Yeah.
And I like to optimistically but pragmatically think that when we do that, then there are people out there somewhere in the world that are speaking our names right now in rooms that you and I are not in, because we're here doing this with each other.
That
So
is correct.
you're a gift. I love you. I think everything that you do is awesome. Although I humbly accept that you are an imperfect, flawed human being, just like I am. But your intentions are in the right place. The conversation is really important. I said to Deanna, our show producer, the other day, and I've been thinking this for a while. I think subconsciously, not to blow you up too big here, but I think subconsciously, when we rebranded and expanded the thesis of this show from what it used to be, which was about helping people essentially become a mentor for the duration of the show, but into this idea that I wanted to have these longer form conversations with what I'm now propagating to the world, entrepreneurial thinkers. I think in the back of my mind, you were the profile of the person that I was thinking about. Like amidst the people that I'm close with, that I respect, that I interact with a lot on social, whatever, like I think how you approach what you do, your work in life, I think was this template for like this idea that, entrepreneurial thinker is someone that is bigger than just the definition of this job title. And I think you've just given us nothing but evidence that that's true today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Rob. And I look forward to, the future with you. Optimistic.
100%, 100% true. How can people, if they want to find you, follow you, connect with you, whatever, or if we don't want them to find and follow you, we can tell, how can people connect with you on the
Follow me,
socials?
on the socials. LinkedIn is probably the safest bet. It's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And if you happen to find yourself on Blue Sky, find me on Blue Sky, Qiana at Blue
There we
Sky,
go.
whatever that is. I haven't memorized it, but it's my first name. So I'm an adopter of Blue Sky. Come on
I
over
love
to
it.
Blue Sky.
See, I may go try it. I think I signed up for it the first day, and that I haven't ever used it, so I may
Yeah.
try it out now. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.